Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to episode number 500 of NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as it has been for the past 3 years now. Thank you guys for all of your support over the past 3 years, and if you're watching for the first time, welcome. My name is Aaron Rift. I'm the owner of NoDQ.com. 3 or 4 times a week, I come on here, answer questions from spring.me/Aaron Rift with my thoughts on the world of wrestling from WWE and TNA. We are coming off WWE Battleground, literally just ended moments before I started recording this video, so let's not waste any time. Let's get started here with the questions regarding Battleground. First one today from Showstopper526. Congrats on reaching 500 episodes. Been a fan since 2012. How did you feel about the overall crowd and the quality of this pay-per-view? Overall, I think that Battleground was one of the weaker WWE pay-per-views of the past year. If I had to give it a grade, probably a C. It was a very average show to me, maybe slightly below average. I thought that the opening match was excellent with the Wyatt family, Harper and Rowan against the Usos. A usual great match from those guys, very fast-paced. The crowd was red hot for this match. I thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And then it went downhill from there. Most of the rest of the show felt like a glorified Raw. John Cena retained the WWE title as expected. Even Stevie Wonder saw that one coming. John Cena retained the title, although WWE did do a good job of protecting Roman Reigns and making him look very strong in that match. And it wasn't a bad match. It was a pretty good Fatal 4-Way match. Not the best Fatal 4-Way match I've seen, but certainly a good match to end the pay-per-view, despite being very predictable. And the rest of the show, very much a mixed bag, perhaps. You could say it was a disappointment. We did not get the Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose match, and they ended up turning that into a big angle where Dean Ambrose was banned from the building, and then he came back out. And Seth Rollins had been declared the winner by forfeit. They had a big brawl. Triple H came out. They broke it up. They kept fighting. So basically, it was just an angle, and I'm guessing their match will now take place at SummerSlam. It has to be considered a disappointment. I mean, going in, that was expected to possibly be the show stealer, and we didn't get that match. WWE saving it for SummerSlam. So that was a letdown. And I got a question here from Popcorn Shower. Hey Aaron, what did you think of the IC Battle Royal finish? It seemed very obvious he was going to win once he went out under the top rope, talking about Miz. Could The Miz being in movies have any effect on how the creative team uses him? Please answer in video. Well, this is not the first time we've seen a finish like this where a heel hides under the ring and then comes back out at the end. It's been done before. And it was, once again, like the main event, very predictable. Once they were doing this bit where The Miz was on the outside hiding, we all saw it coming. Yeah, The Miz is going to come back in at the end and win the whole thing. And another letdown, especially considering how over Dolph Ziggler was. I mean, the crowd popped big for him. He came out, and then Miz eliminated him. A guy who's not really over, eliminating Dolph Ziggler. So, yeah, people weren't happy about that. The Battle Royal itself was a fine Battle Royal. The highlight, in my opinion, was Kofi Kingston. He got knocked off the apron at one point and landed on Big E Langston's shoulders. That was a cool spot. The usual moment with Kofi Kingston somehow avoiding elimination. So that was fun to watch. And a surprise when Cesaro got eliminated by Heath Slater, of all people. That was a little bit of a shock. That was one of the few surprising moments on this pay-per-view. Certainly not good for him. And moving on here, another big match on the show. I got this question. Hey, Aaron, how long do you think the Rusev versus Swagger feud will last, considering how the match finished and all the controversy with Russia? Well, first off, I was a little bit surprised that they brought up the whole incident with the plane being shot down a few days ago. I didn't know if they were going to go there, but they did, and it did get the cheap heat. And, you know, it is a hot feud, and I figured going in, I even posted on Facebook, I figured that there was a decent chance of this match ending in a count-out or a disqualification, so that way they can keep the feud going. So I'm guessing that this feud will continue, like Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. I said it coming in. I said that this was a filler pay-per-view. SummerSlam's the big show that they're building up, and Night of Champions as well, with the network subscriptions coming up. This was going to be a throwaway pay-per-view. They weren't really going to invest a lot in this show, and it was clear. I mean, not really a big surprise going in. I mean, we all knew that this wasn't going to be a big pay-per-view, and these matches were just going to lead up to rematches or whatever at SummerSlam. So not a big surprise. I think it was the right finish, at least with Rusev and Swagger, because it's a hot feud, and they can keep it going at least for another month or so, and I guess they're going to keep playing off the real-life situation with the U.S. and Russia, so whatever. But yeah, overall, I would say slightly below average pay-per-view. All right, moving on now past Battleground. Got a question here from Kayfabe Candy Ass. Yes, a question from Mr. Candy Ass. We cannot have a 500th edition of NoDQ&A video without a question from him. Hindsight being 2020, would you have turned Cesaro babyface after WrestleMania 30? Looking back, I definitely think it probably would have been the right decision to turn him babyface, because that's what the crowd wanted. They wanted to cheer for Cesaro, and they were making him a babyface, and WWE kept him a heel. Now, if he wasn't going to be a babyface, I think the next best thing would have been for him to be part of Evolution and affiliated with Triple H. And this leads me to the next question here. A great manager is someone who can get anyone over, in my opinion. So that said, with the failures of Ryback, Curtis Axel, and now Cesaro being flops for Heyman, do you think being a Heyman guy just isn't what it once was? Who in WWE would be a good fit for him? It's not that Cesaro and Paul Heyman aren't a good mix, and it's not that Paul Heyman isn't doing his best to try and get these guys over. The problem is the creative team and the writing and the way that they are booking Cesaro. I mentioned earlier Cesaro might have been better off in Evolution with Triple H, because that way, at least if he was affiliated with Triple H and they were associated together, I think he would have been booked stronger. The fact that he was put with Paul Heyman, maybe the creative team felt comfortable just keeping him in the mid card, and that definitely hurt his momentum. So it really comes down to the creative team, not Paul Heyman. I really feel that Heyman has done the best possible with the material that he's given, but if he's told to go out there and mention Brock Lesnar and make that the focal point, he has to go out there and do it. But, I really don't feel that it's the fact that Paul Heyman hasn't done a good enough job of trying to get somebody over. I mean, he's just a guy who has to go out there and say what they want him to say. Moving on here, this one comes from Gav LAA 1984. Hey Aaron, congrats on your 500th episode. Thank you for that. Awesome achievement. First time asker from the UK. Why do you think Vince and WWE changed their outlook on WWE when changing to the PG era after the Attitude Era was so successful? Keep up the good work. Simple answer here is they didn't need to keep doing all the crazy stuff they were doing with the Attitude Era. First of all, they were upsetting the sponsors, and doing the whole Attitude Era in the first place and making your product more edgy. The downside to that is you lose sponsorships and you alienate those relationships with other companies, or at least potentially you alienate those relationships. So in time, when WWE went public, things started to change, and once WCW shut down, there really wasn't the necessity to take those risks. So why risk upsetting your sponsors? It got more PG as the years went on. I mean, even in 2002 and even as late as 2006, 2007, they were still doing some questionable stuff. But in recent years, they've really. I think the Chris Benoit thing, was the final nail in the coffin. I mean, I really feel that was a turning point in WWE when they really wanted to clean up the image of the company completely. And, it was just a series of events that led WWE to, gradually tone down the product, not just in the ring physically, but also with the content. So, it's just them trying to be a more responsible company. And, not having the need to push the envelope when you don't really need to. And this leads me to the next question from James C5154. Hi Aaron, James from Ireland, a longtime NoDQ fan. If you were in charge, what changes would you make to the WWE? Could you answer in video? Well, if money was not an issue, I mean, if I was running WWE from a business standpoint, I think I would be doing mostly what they're already doing now. I would push the guys that are making money, and I would look at merchandising, and whoever's selling the merchandise, that would be the guys that I would push. If money wasn't an issue, I had a bottomless pit of money that I could spend, I would try to take more chances. I think that I would try to hire writers that perhaps have more experience, and I would just try to take more chances and try to come up with logical storylines and try to have storylines that have more twists and turns, and storylines where you have swerves and things that are unexpected, but in the end you can look at it and you could say, well, I should have seen that coming, it all makes sense now. That sort of thing, good storytelling. That to me has always been a major problem in WWE. So, I mean, that's one thing I would really work on if I was in charge. And going back to earlier, I mean, the thing about the Attitude Era is it was unpredictable and it was must-see TV, and now you don't really have that. So I would make an effort to try to make shows like Raw more must-see television and have compelling storylines. Not necessarily edgier stuff that's pushing the envelope like TV14, but just good storytelling where when the show's over, you're really excited and you want to see what happens on next week's show. And that's the way wrestling, at least for me personally and for a lot of people, that's how it used to be when you could not miss an episode of Monday Night Raw. I mean, it was must-see TV and it was very exciting and action-packed. I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want to get to the point where I'm hot-shotting angles and doing title changes constantly. Just trying to make the storylines more logical and more compelling and giving people a reason to tune in to the next week's show and to follow along with the storylines. All right, this one comes from MissCott0912. Hey Aaron, cheers to NoDQ's Big 500. Do you see any NXT talent such as Adrian Neville or Sami Zayn coming up to the main roster anytime soon? Please answer in video. I think that there's no hurry in WWE to bring up more people right now. They just introduced several new characters, Paige, Adam Rose, Rusev. I think that perhaps by the end of the year, we'll see a few more guys get called up from NXT, but it's not, they're not just going to bring up every single guy to the main roster. And their attitude is that these guys are already getting exposure on the WWE network, so there's no need to rush and bring them up to the main roster too soon. And you don't want these guys coming up when you already have a bloated roster, and you already have other guys that are being pushed. It would be better for guys like Sami Zayn to come up when there's a good spot for them to come in and an opportunity for them to come in and make an immediate impact. So, you don't want to bring them to the main roster when they could very easily get lost in the shuffle. All right, this one comes from Gravy Sticks. How fast would WWE have gotten its needed network buys if the Attitude Era was happening now? With that said, do you think the only true change they can make to help is to make changes to the current product and old content is just an added bonus? That's a good question. If WWE had a more compelling product right now and if wrestling was really hot, there's no question, I think, that network buys would increase, and with wrestling interest higher, you would have more people watching and more people spending money on WWE. The fact that wrestling isn't very hot right now, I'm sure that is a factor. Probably not a major factor, because I still think that at the end of the day, it's your most hardcore fans that are buying the network, not your casual viewers. So even if wrestling is more popular, it just means you have more casual viewers and not necessarily people that are going to put down the $60 for a 6-month term to subscribe to the WWE Network. Might make a little bit of a difference, but I really don't think it would make much of a difference. But certainly if wrestling was more popular, you would have more excitement amongst the hardcore fans. So, I mean, it could help to some degree, I think. All right, this one comes from Dave451985. What's your take on the signing of Kenta? Congrats on 500, Aaron. Thank you for that. I think that it's a good thing. I think that it's good to have some diversity in WWE. It is a bit of a change of pace for WWE because we haven't really seen a whole lot of Japanese superstars getting pushed strongly in WWE. We've had a few like Tajiri, but overall not that many. So, this is something different for WWE, and I hope it works out. I hope that they do bring in more international stars and have somewhat of a variety. And, I think that he has a decent shot of making it because he will stand out from other guys. And you look at people like Sheamus and Wade Barrett, guys coming from outside the United States. That alone helps them stand out. The accent, the look, those kind of things are important to making it in WWE. So the fact that he is Japanese in the United States, that will help him stand out in WWE. So we'll see what happens. He's going into NXT and he's going to go through the developmental system, and time will tell if he can adapt to the WWE style, and we'll see if he makes it. It's definitely a good possibility. I mean, he certainly is a big enough name in Japan, and we'll see if it translates to WWE. I mean, things didn't really work out for Sin Cara, so they don't want to have another failure like that. So they're going to be very cautious and get him in NXT and try to get him ready for the big time in WWE. All right, one more question here today from Derek J 1993. Final question for episode 500. Hey Aaron, what did you think of Impact this week from New York? I thought it was a good show. Congrats on 500 episodes. Keep up the good work. Thanks again for that. I thought that overall Impact was a good show. I've been enjoying TNA as of late. I think that the shows have been good for the most part. And I did enjoy the Bobby Lashley-Jeff Hardy match. I think the TNA is doing a good job with how they've booked Lashley as champion so far, making him a dominant monster. I like that. I also like the fact that Austin Aries won the gauntlet, and he'll be challenging Lashley at Destination X. And I like the fact that they've been building up Austin Aries as a credible challenger to Lashley. And I thought that was a very good match, that X Division gauntlet. That was showcasing TNA and what people remember fondly of from TNA. The X Division fast-paced action. So, that was definitely a positive. The biggest negative to me on the show was just the whole ECW storyline. I know why they did it. They were in New York and they wanted to, they did not want fans to have their negative chants, and they really wanted to make sure the fans there were into the show. So, they were going to do the whole ECW nostalgia thing to ensure that the people were into the show and, cheering for the guys like Bully Ray and Tommy Dreamer. And, that's why they did it. But to me, it's just going back to the past again. And, they've been doing this ECW stuff on and on for years now. And it's kind of the same old thing. ECW died 13 years ago. It's done. And I don't think it's a good idea to keep doing the nostalgia angles. I think you need to move forward and look towards the future and not going back to the past over and over again. So, I mean, it's really getting old, but I know why they did it. They perhaps sort of had to have done it because who knows what those fans would have chanted if you didn't have guys like Bully Ray and Tommy Dreamer. You didn't have that whole feel-good ECW nostalgia on that show. So, they might have had no other choice. All right, that'll wrap things up for this edition of No DQ&A video. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video and all the other No DQ&A videos that you've been watching, or maybe this is your first time. If it's your first time, I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked today's video, please share it on Facebook and Twitter. Tell a friend about No DQ&A video, and I will see you guys next time for episode number 501. See you next time.